Matt.
Yes?
I hate to start this episode on a downer, but we've got some bad news.
Oh dear.
Seriously, we've run out of ideas.
For the show?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's episode 2. We're going to get to episode 6 or 7 at least. Don't worry about that.
Alright.
In general, the human race is running out of ideas.
What?
Yeah.
So, we're basically running out of intellectual and theological ideas due to a stagnation of culture, loss of necessity, or the abandonment of religion and wonder for the sake of reason?
Well, look at it this way. Anytime anybody ever tries to come up with an image of God, it tends to look like something that we would have experienced here on Earth. For example, Morgan Freeman, or the Santa Claus.
Yeah, you have to admit Morgan Freeman does look pretty good, though.
Morgan Freeman is the closest thing that we're going to get.
Oh, yeah.
Now, why does this happen? Well, I'm glad that I asked. The reason why is because we can only create based off what we know. And our level of research and personal experience will influence that, but it doesn't change the fact that if we have no idea what's out there beyond our capacity to understand as a human being, that is our limit.
You pretty much just described agnosticism.
Oh, wicked. That was an accident. I have a spiritual... Oh, no, shit. I am agnostic. Okay, anyways. The point is, we've gotten to a point now where it's not really a problem. As a matter of fact, it's kind of a celebration of what we've achieved as human beings. To be able to create something, and whether on purpose or accidentally, have other people's works and influences inform what we create.
I feel like we're getting incredibly deep for the show. We are still talking about video games, right?
Oh, you better fucking believe we're still talking about it. In this example, it's going to be game tropes.
Press X, do not die.
Would you like to explain to us what a trope is?
A trope is essentially something that gets... I guess repeated might be too strong of a word, but something that becomes...
Recurring,
just part of the DNA, almost a societal trait, something that keeps getting passed on through non-genetic means. So, like memes are kind of like societal tropes, but essentially in the context of video games, for the sake of let's not start getting to religion and all that kind of stuff, it's something that we see reoccurring in multiple games to the point where it's very easy to now identify it and say, this is an aspect, this we've seen before, and we'll probably see it happen again.
Mm-hmm. The players recognize it, the developers recognize it, and that's part of why we still continue to see it, because now we have an awareness of it.
It's almost a mechanical version of meta-humor when you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To veer away from games, for just one more example, I started watching a very funny British sitcom called The IT Crowd. I think it's actually supposed to be pronounced the It Crowd because they're it. But anyways, the entire company is standing around a room and the boss is congratulating everyone on a job well done. Thank you to the lawyers and thank you to the sales team. And then he's going to get to our protagonist and they're like, oh, he's going to thank us next. He's going to thank us next. And he says, I almost forgot to thank the janitors. And their want was frustrated. Now, I knew it was coming. Everyone knows they're not going to be thanked. By the way, such a funny show. Totally check it out. What I'm more interested in is seeing how they play up that particular joke in a style of their own. That's the balance between using a trope and still creating something that you're bringing new to the table. What trope, and we're on video games now,
Yes.
would you say you hate the most?
Bloody eye so real.
Bloody eyes are real.
No, bloody eye so real.
Bloody eyes so real?
Yes, that's...
Okay, I actually really thought it was bloody eyes are real this whole time. I'm
Really?
sorry.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, the whole idea is, well, it's a symptom of more problems, but it's a very obvious symptom, which is why I like pointing at it, and a lot of people actually like pointing at it. It's the idea that in first-person shooters, or even third-person shooters, which makes no sense when you think about it, as you are damaged, blood veins or just the red color just seep their way from the outside of the screen and onto it. And especially if you want to look at an example like Mass Effect 2, they weren't even subtle about it. Like, it was solid red inserting its way, and that was a third-person game. Like, why is it...
Yeah, you also notice that your heartbeat starts coming through the sound.
Well, that isn't as big a problem. I guess as...
It all culminates in the sign that you're taking a lot of damage, usually.
Again, it's the eyes that everyone has a problem with.
Right.
I guess as a veteran of Unreal Tournament, I know for sure that in that game, if you're down to 20 health points or even 10 health points, you ain't dead yet. You can still go on killing sprees, double kills, triple kills. I mean, yeah, you should prioritize finding a health pack, but you're not dead. You're still able to jump around and shoot and act exactly like you're able to do so. Now, I guess just now playing a modern game, I find it really difficult to think that when I'm at really low health, my screen's getting obscured, the colors draining, which is something that a lot of games are now doing, and it becomes harder to see, harder to function. So here I am in a panic state, thinking I need to either kill the thing that's killing me, or find a health pack, or just take action.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to see
action
health packs usually in modern military shooters. You may have someone acting as a medic to heal you, but I can't even think of a game that would have that off the top of my head. Team Fortress 2, but that's not realistic, though.
Yeah, but it's a matter that you're impeding my ability to act now, and I'm aware that this is supposed to be realistic, but it's translated to sci-fi shooters, it's translated to some MMOs, it's translated to other genres, where just as you're getting injured, the blood is coming in from the sides, and I'll accept that people want to do the bloody outline inside of the screen, but there's just so many examples of it being done horribly wrong, of you not being able to see, and this isn't even always a modern military shooter or a realistic shooter. And I guess the main issue I have with this is the symptom of the regenerating health, which is a symptom of, or not a symptom, but it's also resulting in visible health bars. That's why a lot of people like doing the bloody ISO reel, because that way they don't have to put a health bar on the screen. It's just however much your vision is obscured is how damaged you are. And I find that to be incredibly frustrating as someone who's used to thinking, okay, 10 health, not dead yet, but need to find a health pack.
Well, in order for a game to properly immerse a player, there has to be tension. You have to feel like if you make mistakes, you make enough of them, you're going to die. Now, what's supposed to be the point of the bloody ISO reel is that you're not thinking properly right now. You're out of cover. Someone has the bead on you and they are shooting you. You need to move. You need to have not been in this position. The difference between a video game and real life is that in a video game you can actually apply a retrospect to what you did and then try again, this time not putting yourself in that position where you get shot at by someone who you probably couldn't even see. Now, I don't feel like the whole the damage taking thing is trying to emulate what happens in real life. Because in real life, you get shot by a bullet, you're down on the ground, you're bleeding out, you're crying out for a medic, and you're not having a lot of fun.
Well, even if you're wearing a bulletproof vest and get shot in the bulletproof vest, that's still shock trauma, that still might be affecting your breathing for the next second or so while you rewind.
I mean, even Counter-Strike, which at the time when it came out was incredibly realistic because a couple of shots, even with Kevlar, and you're dead. You never really see a game that fully captures the impact of getting hit by a bullet. So what's the point of this bloody ISO reel? It's to illustrate that you need to not do that. You need to know that if you stay there, you will get shot by a bullet in the head and you're dead.
Well, it's one thing when you have this in the modern military shooter genre, or Spunk Gargle Levy, or whatever the heck you want to call it. It's another thing that it seems to, because a Call of Duty game will sell well, and people like emulating Call of Duty things, you now have bloody ISO reel working its way into unrealistic things. Like, I don't have to play a fantasy game, get injured, and then deal with a bloody ISO reel. I mean, what the heck is the point? I just equip the right spell, have my hand glow, and whoa, look at me, I'm now healed again. And there's even some MMOs that are adopting the idea of bloody ISO. Like, it's something that even if it had a purpose, and my Mass Effect 2 example still stands prevalent, because it wasn't even a subtle red hue coming in, it was full-on veins getting drawn, and I couldn't see.
Well, I think even in a sci-fi or a fantasy genre where it's not trying to emulate real life, it's still trying to create a believable reality. Because you still have to control a character who exists in this world and is still made of functioning body parts and organs and amusing fluids that can spray out of orifice. Wow, that went wrong real fast.
That was actually record time, I'd have to say, for you.
Yeah, seriously. But just because you're using laser guns instead of an assault rifle, it doesn't mean that your character isn't going to take real, actual damage, and you need to be communicated at that point. Well, in fact, if anything, in science fiction, getting hit by a bullet actually is more believable because you can assume that the armor you're wearing can actually absorb the damage.
Yeah, it's I don't like it because it's a gameplay feature that when I'm running out of health, I need to be able to react, think, and be alert. I can't have all these visual, like, for years, having your health bar flash red or something like that was pretty sufficient in telling you what the heck was going on. In fact, if you look at games like Team Fortress 2, when you're low at health, like your health bar is now red, and I believe some games have been flashing, like that is sufficient. And even if you want to do a red haze around the edge of your vision, that's one thing. It's another thing when it starts slowly but surely blinding you, and now you have no chance whatsoever to save yourself. You're dead because you can't see. Your last 5 health points exist for the sheer pleasure of your enemy watching a man on fire flail about.
Health in general is a difficult thing to properly integrate into a game because it can never fully realistically cover someone's actual health.
And yet the health bar system is working so well.
Well, I like to look at health bars as really more of like just damage shields. You take several fireballs to the face and you still have health. Clearly you're supposed to be dead, but that health is the actual shield that is preventing you from taking that last hit that actually would have killed you. So the next game trope that I want to talk about is game designers using the tutorial mission as a way to bring you into the environment and bring you into the story as well as teach you the game. I don't know if it's got a title for it or not, but here's a situation for you. You've just come out of cryo sleep. I'm narrowing down the examples to basically one. If you can guess it, you know what you're talking about. There's something terrible going on. There's aliens and the Civil War, and only you can stop it. We need you to get your gun and shoot everyone right away. First, I need to calibrate your vision. So can you look to the top? Okay, great. Now can you look to the bottom? All right, cool. You're doing great so far. Okay, now look to the left. All right, last, I just need you to look to the right. Okay, now do you want to invert that? No, okay. So what happens is a game developer has to assume that the person picking up the controller or mouse and keyboard has never played a game in their life. Obviously, that's probably not the case for most games, but you still have to have that liability. You still have to make that assumption. So you have to show your player everything that that player needs to know in order to properly play the game. That means you need to know how to walk, you need to know how to jump, you need to know how to duck, you need to know how to operate heavy machinery, you need to know how to properly tie your shoelaces, you need to know how to shoot, reload, change weapons, throw grenades, mount the dragon.
Mount the dragon.
Patent pending on that game concept. So I, for one, appreciate how developers find different ways to show the player what to do while still trying to make them feel like they're involved in what's going on. Some games would just do like a tutorial mission and it's laid back, it's not put into the story. I loved Myth 2 Soulblighter's tutorial missions from way back, where the announcer was just teaching you everything in this little corral and the peasants are coming in, they're watching you train and they're actually excited, and then you can get a dwarf and throw grenade equivalent in Myth World into the peasants. They all blow up into a bloody mess, and the narrator's like, "Don't harm the peasants! You're supposed to be learning here! What are you doing?"
Well, So you don't like the fact that it seems like every game has to include sort of a tutorial-ish thing?
Well, if I'm playing a sequel to a game, I assume the game mechanics have carried over largely from the last one.
There have been some. Have you heard of White Knight Chronicles?
No.
Okay, it was a PS3 game. First one didn't get very good reviews. It's one of those games where everyone looked at the trailers and thought, "Oh my god, this is gonna be amazing," and then when we played it, it's like. Anyway, the second one picked up so much after the first one that every copy of the second game comes with a copy of the first game, and by the time you beat the first game, get to the second, they don't give you a tutorial, they don't give you lessons, they don't give you anything. It's just right where we left off in the first one, which is why they had to package the first one with the second one, because otherwise there's no one explaining to you what the hell happened in the first game. You have to just play it.
I see. Well,
So in that case, the tutorial was the entire first game, included for you free, making any copy of the actual first game a pretty bad investment.
I don't dislike it that much because I think it's important to make sure that everyone is on the same page when they're playing something. As a matter of fact, I dislike it more when there is no training section or there is no practice area for a game, and the game is just kind of throwing you into the story. Because what happens is when you're playing through a mission and you're stuck on a point, or a boss has a particular pattern that you can't seem to figure out, and it turns out all along there was some move you were supposed to know, and that if you would just access the menu, gone into sub options, and then looked under advanced moves, and then under advanced moves you would have seen special moves, and then under special moves you would have seen advanced special moves, then yeah, you would have known exactly what to do.
That's a lot of recursing.
Genius.
I think, well, we're going to have training missions every game because, as you said, we have to presume people have never picked it up. And unfortunately, game manuals have kind of gone out the window. Like, I've purchased a few games where you open it up and the case is transparent. So by removing the disc and looking at the empty case, that tells you what the controls are on the controller.
Mm-hmm.
And the actual game manual, oh, well, are you plugged into the internet? Because this game will automatically get you the manual from the internet.
Just go to the Steam meshes boards. Just go on Steam, kid.
Oh, well, I'm not even going so far as Steam. I'm thinking PlayStation.
Fair enough.
But there are a lot of examples, I think, of tutorial missions done correctly. I mean, one of the best examples, I think, is Final Fantasy VII, which is not the greatest RPG of all time.
It's still good.
It's still good. It's very good.
Very good.
It's very good. But, let's please, everyone stop praising it and demanding a remake and all that stuff. But
I think there are worse games you could remake. Okay, I'm going to stop now. Go ahead.
There is the tutorial mission for that. You are the main character, but you are teaching other students or teaching other people how to fight. So you, the main character, know how to do your job. You're teaching other people how to do their jobs within the same unit as you. So that is a sort of brilliantly done tutorial mission because, yeah, pretty much that. You're learning as a player, but the character, are teaching other characters. Another example of well-done tutorials are usually when you're playing somebody else, and then they die in the intro mission or they get captured or something like that, and then you switch over to the main character. And thus you have all the player knowledge of having learned as the other person, but now you're picking up a character who has been at the demon fighting game for a long time, so they kind of know all this stuff.
That reminds me of one lesser trope that I see from time to time where you're teased by seeing all the superpowers you have at the beginning, and then it's taken away from you, like Tales of, I want to say, Fantasia for the Super Nintendo, where you had a fully decked out 4-man party that was about to engage in what appears to be the final boss, and somebody casts a huge spell and it's awesome, and then you get to your character and he can swing a sword and his friend shoots arrows from a bow. And you're working your way up from there. And Metroid did it.
Oh, the Prime series.
Yeah, they did it. Well, the Prime 3, I don't remember doing that. Prime 1 and 2. On Prime 1, you get it, because the opening space station is just the tutorial, so you're just figuring out how to play as Samus, which at that point was unprecedented, because this is Samus's first time in 3D, so it's totally justifiable.
And instead of doing the aim at a 45-degree angle, you now have lock-on.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say, I think I'm going to make that like one of my favorite, if not my favorite, introductions into a game. And then Samus gets electrocuted because the elevator is malfunctioning or something. No, she was running for it. She gets damaged and all her parts go flying everywhere. And then she has to go and earn each piece back by fighting a boss that had that ability.
It's a little weird. I remember she was going from having that detailed armor, those huge shoulder pads, and all of a sudden now she's got flat shoulder pads. Wait, how did that work?
Yeah.
Well, at least not a conceit either.
I think a needle actually popped on both of them, and they just deflated.
And I know in number 2, you basically get covered in goo from one of the Ing. I believe they're called the Ing. And because of that, like, they've split up and spawn them, go into their various corners of the place. You now need to kill them to retain that stuff back. But I think a lot of people had a lot of really good comments in that whole system, into that ready, I'll go off to adventure, whoop, trip, no, my power-ups!
They'll just roll into a sewer grate. Oh,
yeah.
God, son of a bitch.
Yeah, and it's always weird because the power-ups never include expanded health. You were still starting with basic health in all those games, which was weird.
Yeah, it's also funny because she takes considerable amounts of damage from every other volatile species on the planet, and no one ever seems to get rid of her power-ups. It had to be that particular wardrobe malfunction to do it.
Kirby, if he takes a bunch of damage, he'll lose whatever power-up he's carrying.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
But he doesn't really pocket power-ups.
Kirby isn't carrying an advanced suit of, technology, unless he steals Samus's suit, which has happened.
Yeah, several times.
And I'm not sure if it's canon, but it's happened.
Yeah, and I think another example of that would be the Darksiders 1 game. You start off as War, the horseman of the apocalypse, and you're down on Earth doing your war thing, and you're pretty much invincible, but as you find out later in the plot, like, wait a second, you weren't supposed to be on Earth. So you hit a realistic point where spontaneously your powers are taken away because the powers of V have basically said, what? War's on Earth? Okay, quickly, hoover up his powers. We're still trying to clean up the apocalypse, so just take away his powers for now, then we're going to try to get this rest of the mess, and we'll get to him later, but at least he's not a threat anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that at least was a part where it made sense. Because if you start a game and the premise is you're playing as one of the horsemen of the apocalypse, you don't want to start the game pretty much like they started Darksiders 2 where you had absolutely nothing. Like, when I played Darksiders 2, I considered New Game Plus to be the real thing. Like, you're playing it on hard mode, but you've got all the power-ups you collected in normal.
Yeah,
That's a true
it's like,
experience.
when you're watching a film, you watch it once for content, and then you watch it again because you actually want to get into the details of it, and you want to sort of maximize your understanding of it.
Yes, but I think we've covered, at least, is there any other form of tutorial mission you want to cover?
No, none of that. Oh, there is one last losing power example that I really enjoyed was from Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne, where you're playing Arthas, who's, at this point, full-on bad guy, and his connection with the Lich King is splintering. So every time you play a mission, he would actually gone down a level. So by the end mission, where he finally fixes the problem, where the Lich King turns the power off and on again, he has to level up throughout to get to level 10 throughout that one last mission. So I just thought that was interesting because usually you're used to, in Warcraft 3, leveling your hero up through the course of a campaign. So you don't usually see a hero that's getting weaker and weaker and weaker and more of a liability. So I enjoyed that one a lot.
I would like to say I think the worst kind of tutorial is the one that just completely was put, like, you have the extra long opening level, and you have, like, okay, here, come follow us, press A to double jump to get further heights. Oh, go to the door and press Y to open it. And, oh, they're coming to kill us, like, hold down R to shoot your weapon. It's, thanks, guys, you're kind of destroying the immersion here.
You want to say one?
Okay, well, I think I know I mentioned invisible health bar as a side effect of the whole bloody ice so real and the regenerating health. Regenerating health can be done right, it can be done wrong. I don't really want to go into that as a trope because, again, there are examples of it being done correctly, there are examples. I would say I'm not a huge fan of it because anyone with generating health becomes less durable automatically because you can't have a durable person with generating health that basically says no consequence for running and gunning. If you run and gun or you do a bunch of stupid things, you should either have to chug half your health packs or be dead. So, but, again, it can be done right, it can be done wrong. Portal had regenerating health, but then again, the point of the game wasn't combat. So I can't bash regenerating health as a concept because it can be done right, it can be done wrong. I think the next trope I would like to point out is this seemingly endless need to shove meta humor of some particular type into every single game.
Like self-awareness?
Well, self-awareness or meta humor really is defined as anything that requires outside knowledge in order to appreciate. So it's one thing when you have a character in a game say, why so serious? That's one. But I was playing Assassin's Creed 2, there's one point where you come across, it's like, don't you remember me? It's me, Mario! And I just wanted to go to Ubisoft and punch somebody for that. I mean, really, guys? Really? It seems to be everywhere now. Everything seems to want to reference stuff outside itself. It's either they think they're going to get a chuckle, or maybe they're just not comfortable enough with their own content. They have to reference other things. But it's one thing when you have subtle meta humor, like something sitting on a desk. Metal Gear Solid 3, you meet a Russian, I hope he's Russian or I'm going to get shot, robotics developer, and on his desk, along with all the other figurines, is the Jehudi.
You said it once. We'll look it up later.
It is the mech from the Zone of Enders series.
Okay.
So that obviously is a bit of a joke because yes, this guy builds robots, but why would he have a model for a Zone of Enders mech, which is from a different game that he?
There's a brief clip of Zone of the Enders in the Twin Snakes as well when Snake meets Otacon. So it's been referenced.
Yeah, it's one thing when you've got that figure just on the desk in the background, because some people aren't going to notice it, and those who are, it's going to be, oh, damn you, Kojima. God damn you, why can't I use a bulletproof vest at the same time as a Kika? Anyways, but it really, there's a lot of times where they'll slap you in the face with the meta humor or make very obvious references to it, and every time that happens, I'm taken out of the experience. Even games that don't really concentrate on full immersion or, basically surrounding the immersion, all of a sudden, it takes you out because you have to mentally think of something else in order to get the joke. I mean, it's one thing if they're referencing something that happened in the previous game, but it's another when they start referencing all these things outside of it, and every time you do that, you're breaking the immersion, you're getting out of it, you physically have to think of the outside thing in order to understand it.
Now, I think a good example is when if what's there is serviceable, but if there is the additional layer for people who are a little more informed, and they're rewarded for that. In Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, there's the mushrooms, which, if I'm not mistaken, were kind of a reference to the Super Mario Brothers mushrooms, where you would eat them and you'd regain health. Now, I was reading about this back when they were...
Okay, you mean the glow caps? No, the glow caps were a bit of a... Those were a self-joke. The idea is you eat the glow caps, and for some reason your batteries recharge, and the people on the other side is like, this really shouldn't work. Maybe some kind of placebo effect. Should we correct them? No, we should just leave.
Okay.
I don't think it was a Mario. It was just for some stupid.
Yeah, but I mean, when you
Big Boss's ignorance changed the gameplay.
If you wanted to do like a Mario Bros. Reference with the mushroom,
that's pretty easy.
Yeah, because I think the further back you go, you're dealing with references that are more broad, because at that point in history, there was less to compete with for people's attention. If you wanted to make a Star Wars reference, every nerd's going to get it. If somebody says, "May the Force be with you," just in my everyday proceedings, I wouldn't even bat an eyelash, because "May the Force be with you" is kind of ingrained in my psyche.
Hell, I mean, Jedi is a practicing religion.
Yeah, it doesn't take anything for me to think about it, because I'm that ingrained, or I'm that used to it being around.
Well, I think it's one thing when we, in real life, start referencing stuff, but when you are experiencing an element of escapism, and it comes down to, like, how do we know you're really who you say we are? Because you must go to the Dagobah system and seek out Yoda from... Oh, yeah, okay, so no demon's going to pretend to be you and quote Star Wars. It's another thing when you're in a piece of escapism, and it starts referencing other pieces of escapism, or sometimes even things that have happened in real life, because that's taking you from... Well, imagine if you're listening to a track of music and spontaneously they've got the riff from another track of music just playing in the background, or they do it at some point. Mm-hmm. Like, you start thinking of that other track of music and you're now taken out of what you're currently doing. And I think, like, you've got games like League of Legends and Warcraft, World of Warcraft specifically, which seem to thrive and almost need meta humor injected into them on a regular basis. Hell, you can have a pet in World of Warcraft that's one of the dancing sunflowers from Plants vs. Zombies. So, you're walking around in one video game, and you got a pet following you that's completely from another video game that has nothing to do with Worlds or Warcrafts.
Yeah. You know what, it's funny, I hadn't really thought about this before we started discussing it here, but it almost seems to me that one of the ideas why they do this is to keep the consistency of what you experience in Warcraft with what you experience in real life. By making those references and by showing you that the game understands what you experience on a day-to-day basis, you're less apprehensive about immersing yourself in that environment. It's almost as if by fully committing to a realistic, fantasy environment, as much as that is an oxymoron, that's harder to get people to continue playing it, because they don't want to maybe have to go through the effort of immersing themselves every time they log on. I mean, on Elder Scrolls, you can get as much as you want out of the vanilla experience, but the game opens up once you start adding in mods, and then other players start influencing it.
Is there a mod to correct the falling out of the world bug?
Sure, why not? Oh, are you talking about ESO?
Yes.
I don't think there's a mod in hell that can save that game. No, I'm kidding. All MMOs need time to grow. But you see what I'm saying though, right? Is that, a kid is looking at a phone all day, just, maybe playing Plants vs. Zombies, maybe he's checking out stuff on YouTube, and then he gets home, and then World of Warcraft or League of Legends is keeping that humor going. He's more comfortable in that environment than he would be in others.
Okay, so I'm willing to say that it can be filed into the same regenerating health. Can you at least admit that there are examples, such as I would like to say League of Legends and things like that, where it just starts going too far and becomes sort of the lifeblood? I mean, if I'm playing Gnosis in League of Legends, which is actually supposed to be pronounced Nasus, but I keep getting mocked every time I say that, and I do /Joe. Well, that's it's said with an Egyptian accent. Sorry. And he says, "Who let the dogs out? Woof, woof." Like, it doesn't serve the game at all. It's somewhat silly, and all the characters do, like the whole thing just seems to be running jokes, referencing other games, referencing real life, referencing all that stuff. So it becomes harder to get into the match now because you're one click away from doing something really stupid.
Yeah.
And there's lots of games that seem, especially free-to-play games, that seem to keep doing that, keep shoving other content into them.
Yeah, I will say one other game before we can move on to another trope, which for me, I play Team Fortress 2 quite a bit.
Okay,
and
yeah, I'm getting shot.
Now, because I didn't stop playing when it went free to play. In fact, when it went free to play was one of the most fun times because I'm joining a server and no one else knows what they're doing. So I'm like triple killing, quadruple killing on a life. Just
Time to spy it up.
Yeah, running around. I mean, even as the soldiers, like running up forward, just gunning people down. It was great, and I don't know if the whole hat system is what made me not play that game all that much anymore. But I loved the humor in TF2 when it was based off the TF2 world, and it was based off the characters and all this seemingly hatred for Australia. But then, you start seeing hats from other games, and it's using as a marketing tool and as a promotional tool.
Max's severed head.
And I mean, the game's still fun, but yeah, there is that diminishment of the escapism. I'm reminded of real life by playing this game because real life is trying to, remind me of things.
I guess Team Fortress 2 is a bit of an interesting example because when they made it, the art style was going off kind of like a wartime propaganda like feel. So they had more than enough to go with on themselves before they started introducing outside stuff. I mean, you can get Jason. No, not Jason. You can get the shades that the main character uses in Deus Ex Human Revolution. I think put them on any character. So you now have sunglasses from another video game in this video game. You got revolvers and even a sniper rifle that just the general art style looks very technological and cyberpunk. Doesn't really belong there. So, like, I agree with you in the sense that it started pulling in everything else and it's breaking my experience. I mean, I was kind of thinking that, not literally thinking, but sort of figuratively thinking this is all taking place somewhere behind a war poster in some Art Deco mind, and now it's just a hat simulator.
Yeah, to Valve's credit, they haven't started doing that with Dota 2. The additional hats and clothes and skins that you can buy.
Shadowcat.
Okay, it's still a cat. It's not that. It's not.
No,
it's not a
it's
direct.
Ash with cat ears. Not Ash. It's Drow Ranger with cat ears.
Okay, Drow Ranger with cat ears. It's a cat, but it's. Okay, fine. I see your point. So, one.
And Luna on a dragon. One, the religion she's a part of clearly states they have affinity for cats.
Okay, well, it's still not the same thing as wearing glasses from another character's game.
Okay.
But it is an ominous sign, so I will admit that. So for this next one, it's gonna be a bit of a spoiler, and I'm just going to reference BioShock Infinite and Spec Ops: The Line. So I'm going to I just need to make a spoiler warning for this. Bear with me.
generally speaking, I think we can safely say you recommend both those games.
Yes, absolutely. And throw Bravely Default in there too. So
Oh, yes, because we can't do an episode without him recommending Bravely Default.
well, when I stop playing it, maybe I'll stop talking about it. But
That wasn't the case for Breaking Bad.
I haven't talked about Oh, son of a! I'm sorry, I made it
you
too
need
big.
more space, aren't you?
I
Yeah,
need more space because.
I guess while you're doing that, another trope I'd like to point out would be QuickTime events. This is just going to be a very quick example because I think everyone's done it to death. I'm just going to turn around and say, press X not to die. I think Platinum, being one of my favorite game developers, unfortunately is one of the biggest proprietors of this. One of the big examples being Bayonetta, a game which I thoroughly enjoyed, but I remember the first time I beat the two-headed dragon, it's like, ha, I beat him. That was actually a slightly difficult fight. That's great. I'm putting the controller down. I'm going to, sit back. It's like, oh, quickly you have to swivel the movement. What? No. And I ended up having to do part of that fight again. And even the final boss fight, I had to do part of it again because basically I lost a QuickTime event. And this is another one of those things where I don't understand why we can't just have our cutscenes here and our gameplay here. I don't understand why we're now infusing it because there's no problem with sitting back and watching something.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not a fan of QuickTime events when they let a character do something that I can't make the character do. Like in Resident Evil 4, Leon Kennedy gets into a knife fight with one of his former comrades, and the two of them...
I think.
Yeah, I think that's it. Anyways, and then two of them are backflipping, and there's crossing blades, and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon quality stuff there. And then I'm using the knife when I'm playing the game, and I have three levels. I have head, I have shoulders, I have knees and toes. And that's all I can aim at.
In fact, I think that's just one swing. You're just using the controls to aim the knife. It's just saying.
Yeah, I mean, it was slightly more immersive on the Wiimote, but slightly.
Yeah, I think QuickTime events is one of those things that's just very easy to do them wrong. Darksiders 2, the first fight you had a QuickTime event. I kind of thought that was an homage to the first game because it had a lot of QuickTime events. So, okay, you're fighting a shadow version of War. Mm-hmm. Is it really a spoiler if I'm saying it's the first boss you fight?
First boss is usually the teacher boss.
Yeah, but, I thought it was an homage there. But then for some reason you go the whole game without QuickTime events and spontaneously the last boss brings them back again. So that was a bit of inconsistency. There was a moment in Assassin's Creed 2 where I was supposed to give Leonardo da Vinci a bro hug, but I thought it was a cutscene, so I couldn't pick up the controller and press the button. Who would not want to give Leonardo da Vinci a bro hug? I left him hanging, and he said, well, another time, and he left. I missed my chance to give Leonardo da Vinci a bro hug. If
it helps, you can assume that he's probably smelling terrible.
But he's Leonardo da Vinci.
I know, he's Leonardo da Vinci.
Okay, so anyway.
Just call the doctor, he'll go give him a hug.
It's... Okay, so QuickTime events is something a lot of people complained about. It's one of the things where I think you have to commit to it, and you have to know when you're doing them, and you have to do them correctly, or just, you don't need them.
Yeah, I'll say two examples where I feel it was done right. Heavy Rain, because the entire game was a QuickTime event.
Yeah.
So there's no surprises there.
It also was very consistent. I mean, I remember when you're tied up, one point you actually shake the controller to just try to get out of here. So at least they kept the button configurations consistent and all that stuff.
Yeah. My second example is Bravely Default. No, I'm kidding. It's the Wonderful 101 for the Wii U. In order to do your specials, you have to either draw the symbol using your stylus or your finger, or you can kind of draw it with the analog stick, like a circle for the giant fist, a long line for the sword, a figure S for the whip, and so on and so forth. Now, there are parts of the cutscenes where you and your Wonderful 101, or I don't know, maybe you have 10, whatever, are navigating a boss fight, and it's a cutscene, like I said, and so somebody will cry out, "Wonder Punch!" and you have to do the same mechanic that you do in the game. So it is actually giving you a chance to continue practicing doing these moves. You can get faster at it, you can get more efficient at it, you can, because actually depending on how well you draw it, it does improve the power of it. So there's an example of where, yeah, I'm not doing a move that I myself can do to the same extent when I'm actually controlling the character in the fight, but at least I'm doing the move that I was taught to do.
Okay, so You're going to be doing it, so I'm just going to hold this up, and since I actually do have an intention of playing Infinite one day, I'm just going to plug, or what Star Wars Spec Ops?
We'll do Bioshock Infinite.
Okay.
Okay, so for this
Floor
next
is yours.
one, what's happening is game stories have lately become self-aware and are using self-awareness as a part of the game story. Now, in Bioshock Infinite, at the end of the game, Elizabeth reveals that she knows, she learns everything that's going on, so she can actually see all the different realities and finds the one where she has to kill Booker. You can stop. Okay. Do you want me to? Have you played Spec Ops?
I want to play it, but at the same time, in terms of it compared to the other things I have in this playlist, it's kind of dropped down in priority.
Okay, but you know kind of what they're hinting at through the course of the game. So I mean, in Spec Ops,
I've had the ending spoiled, so I don't think you can give any
No.
bigger spoiling than the ending.
yeah. So I mean, in Spec Ops, you're challenged throughout the course of the game based off your decisions, and those decisions are starting to hurt at your psyche, and eventually there's actually a point where the character says, "Wait a minute, we did this already." What are you talking about? Yeah, at the beginning we did this. That's commenting on the actual game proceedings itself. Bravely Default also has a whole parallel reality thing going on too, where you keep going to the same world over and over again, but the events are playing out slightly differently. Now, what is it about breaking down the actual game design itself as a part of the story? You know, what happened to a very simple story about just achieving, something as a hero, beating the bad guy and calling it a day? Where did this existential crisis come from?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think it may have come from just a consumer audience that became more self-aware and more knowledgeable that this stuff is going on and started asking questions. I mean, once upon a time, we had the Goblin King. Who is he? He's the Goblin King. He's the king of the goblins.
Right.
He's not a nice guy. He wants to kill us. He wants to take over the kingdom. And as we as a gaming community and as a escapism consuming community, basically wanted some people more intelligent. If you even look at what's the latest Avatar thingy called? Quran?
You're talking to the wrong guy.
Korra.
Okay.
Korra. In Korra, someone in the comment section is going to murder me by the end of this video.
I made the assumption when I started this that every comment's going to be hateful, so...
Yeah. I'm tempted to just turn them off.
Yeah,
but
you don't need
are
to
we
have
done
comments.
with spoilers?
For now.
Okay, but it... Oh, I'm going to need it for this one, actually. Has a villain who apparently...
Okay, go.
Lee... are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine, go.
Who apparently, once you discover what's actually going on, turns out he's in the right. He's, trying to do the correct thing, and it's another person who's the villain. So the guy we were told from the beginning to hate and not like, well, it turns out he's actually, doing the best for his people. He's trying all that stuff, and it's a different person who's actually the villain, which may, in fact, just be some kind of weird twist, but... Okay,
Apparently that was the same story in Transcendence, the new Johnny Depp movie.
Really? Because I heard it was incredibly simple.
Well, I think they were trying to do it, and they just didn't succeed.
Okay. But, it's... Our villains became more complicated. Our villains became more nuanced. An anime series called Speed Grappler, 18 plus, guys. I mean, it's not like explicit nudity or any of that stuff, but there's a lot of mature content, so please, our younger audience, don't look that one up. But it had a villain who we spent half the series really hating, and then we find an episode where we understand how we turned into the villain we know him today. It still doesn't excuse his actions, but all of a sudden it comes down to if any of us had walked the same path, we would have either died or turned into him anyways.
Right.
Again, it doesn't make him excusable, but it's still... So at a certain point we started demanding more complexity from our story, from our villains, from our worlds, and unfortunately this led to a certain point where we're becoming more self-aware of it.
Right. But it doesn't make a better story. I mean, for me, what are the kinds of stories that seem to resonate with people? Well, you have works of J.R. Tolkien, you have the original Star Wars trilogy, you have Batman. You have stories that don't need to break down what these stories actually mean. I mean, in Batman there's a lot of the villains testing him psychologically, but that's that. That's still testing him as a character. It's not testing Batman as a comic book. And then on the other hand, you have somebody like Deadpool, who loves the fact that he's a comic book character, who just lets everyone know, yeah, it's a comic book. And, I mean, when he's in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, he grabs the life bar and he starts beating people with it.
And of course, let's not forget taunt button.
Yeah. That's his taunt.
Yeah,
that's fun. That's amazing. So, what are we? Is it going to keep going? Are we still going to see more and more stories where they actually reveal the fact that this thing is kind of breaking down on an existential level, or is it going to get to a point where we all kind of accept that yes, we don't fully understand the universe, we still want to tell stories? Can we stop doing this? For me, the best examples have always been the ones that have kind of accepted their place in reality, but at the same time still tell a compelling story. Like Metal Gear Solid has no illusions about the fact that it's a game. Snake has no illusions that he's a game character. Snake, Psycho Mantis, he's messing with your head. Try unplugging the controller and plugging it into port 2. Like, okay, well, at that point, Snake has to accept the fact that he's a game character.
Well, at least in terms of Metal Gear Solid as an example, I've never really thought that him accepting it's a video game or whatever, it's just a momentary laugh, a momentary nod, or a wink to the person playing the game.
No, but you notice is that over the course of the game, there are a lot of those moments where they have to tell Snake things that they can only tell him because he's a game character. Like, the radar on the field of vision, or check the back of your game box for the codex sign. It's all things that Snake would have no way of not knowing if he weren't a game character.
Yeah, but I've never really put him as someone acknowledging it. It would just seem to be in one ear, out the other.
Yeah, well, that's only because, also that's because Snake is the avatar for us.
Yeah, but I think we're getting a little bit off point here. Like, you're basically saying, are things going to keep referencing themselves, or are we going to keep getting to this meta position, or are we going to eventually snap back into the ye old fantasy days of the Goblin King? Okay, that's a bit of a jump. I worded that badly. But
well, for you, what I'm just curious about is what would be your preference. My preference would be accept what the reality is, but still tell me the story. Don't try to use breaking down your reality as the actual story itself.
I want whatever content I consume to take itself seriously first and foremost. Now, if you're going to make a game that accepts it's a game, I don't really think that's something I'd be too interested in, but at least commit to the message, do something like it. I guess, again, just using the whole Metal Gear franchise as an example, to the most part, it takes itself as a game seriously, and then we'll just have occasional nod outs, occasional jokes, and occasional references. But it's still, within its world, it believes its consequences, it believes its purpose, it believes its reason and all that stuff. And I really do think that is what games should be doing. They should be, within the context of the world, this is real, this is serious, this has consequences. So if they want to do an occasional joke or something, that's fine, as long as at the core they take themselves seriously.
Works for me.
Like, why would you call a game Bravely Default when there's an action in the game called defaulting? So that's the story premise of the game. You bravely take the action known as default?
It's being brave by knowing when to default, I guess.
Why can't you just call it the guard action? It's been called the guard action since the dawn of I don't know, Xenosaga?
Okay, well, I don't want to spend the next hour explaining to you why it's called Bravely Default. I'm not going to do that.
Well, we could do that while I sleep on the spoiler sign and just have a nice fast forward segment.
All I'm going to say is I'm not going to bring up Bravely Default unless I do an episode on it, but right now on 3DS you could not find a better game to play. Fuck you. Well, I'm all out of tropes. I don't know about you.
I think those are the major ones. DLC isn't really a trope, but it's something I want to poke fun at, because it used to be content updates for free. I mean, I like holding Unreal Tournament 3 as a great example. We had several content updates for that, absolutely free, but then again, it's an easy to mod game. So, hey, here's DLC including these new maps. And the modding community takes a grand total of 1 hour and they photocopied all of them. And now they're mods and they can't do shit about it. So, maybe that's kind of why. I think like the major, it's a little hard to say what it is because I think a lot of people are going to notice them more and a lot of people are going to have differences. Like this is unfortunately something which you may just have to keep the comment section open because this is definitely an up for discussion thing. I mean, we've discussed the ones that are pretty obvious and pretty out there, but you know, there's lots of other ones that I'm sure are annoying nuisances. Some people notice them, some people don't notice them, and some things which we may consider to be good game mechanics might just be something that other people think is a trope. So I think this is just a very subjective topic. But not controversial, although we seem to have made it controversial at points.
Well, yeah.
Hey, if we get kicked off YouTube on our second episode, that's actually a bit of an achievement.
There's always Vimeo.
Achievements! That's a trope. Do we really need them? I mean, aren't we taken out of the game every time a little thing comes up and says, yada yada, we've been taken out of the... I'm going to just keep talking and ignore that. Like, doesn't it take it out? I mean, funny enough, Team Fortress 2 had a fun system with achievements where they would
How do you
be...
spell achievement?
I'm not telling you. Partially because I don't remember right at the moment. But it had a good system where like you'd have an achievement as the pyro for reflecting a rocket with your air blast. Well, that is something you need to learn.
Out of space again.
We need more than one chalkboard.
Yeah, good point.
But, you know, so that would teach you things like uber heavy and have them kill so many people in an extended period of time. Like, it was a way to teach people. And Minecraft achievements are the only way to teach people. Punch wood, you get an achievement. Make a whatever box, you get an achievement. Make a better pickaxe, you get an achievement for that. And that's how you learn to that game. But so many of them are just incredibly stupid. Like, you progress through the plot, and just beating certain bosses gives you an achievement, even though you did nothing but beat the boss. And that's a wrap.
Thanks for watching. I guess this is where the credits are coming. So
Yeah.
I just hold it. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, thankfully we don't have many people to thank, so it's very short credits.
Very short.
Mhm.
We might not even need credits.
Yeah.
But I figured I'd hold it just in case.
Well, I figure we can just have the copyright whatever emblem just sitting there for indefinitely until your arm wears out. We need team building exercises or something. We are so mean to each other.
I think we need to up the meanness. It's cathartic.
I think you can put the sign down.
No! No, I'm leaving
Okay,
it up.
okay, well, I'm off. All right.